So the phrase age ain't nothing but a number applies to learning new things, it applies to fitness goals, and even career changes, right? But does it apply when it comes to buying commercial property? Well, we're gonna talk a little bit about that today. My name is Lexi Sims. I'm a commercial real estate advisor based out of Houston, Texas, and I get a lot of questions about, am I too old to invest in commercial real estate? So let's get into it. So first, let's start off with a little bit of a backstory. So I am the sole child of two entrepreneurs, right? They're 69 and 70, and they both still work full time, not because they necessarily have to, but because they just really love what they do and they want to, right? So I grew up with a lot of on-the-job training, free labor as a kid worker, and it really taught me a lot about being an entrepreneur, running a business, and then how that cycle kind of shifts as you start to get up in age. And one thing that I learned watching my parents go through this cycle is that the question isn't always, am I too old? It's more so, what are my options? And people don't always know what their options are, and we're gonna get into some of that today. So the real question isn't, am I too old? The real question is, does this make sense financially? And that's the question whether you're 30 years old or 60 years old. And that's more of a math problem than it is an age question, right? So if we are able to do the math on a deal, we're calculating the NOI, we're calculating the cash on cash return, we're determining the DSCR. Those things are going to tell you whether or not you should invest in a property and not the fact that you are a certain age. And so whether 30 or 60, that's what it really comes down to. And having those numbers, having that solid foundation really helps to get rid of some of that fear and anxiety that people have around purchasing, because now we can see it plain as day on paper. Does this make sense? Am I making a strong financial decision? And that eliminates any qualms about how old you are at the time. So let's say you come to me and you are 58 years old and you say, Lexi, I think that I have missed my window on investing in commercial real estate, right? So you thinking, I am at the end of my kind of working ages, I'm getting up there. I know that real estate is a long-term game plan, and so I don't have a lot of years left, and so is this something that I should be pursuing? So here's what I would say. One of the most beautiful things about commercial real estate is that when you run those numbers correctly and make a sound deal, you can have cash flow on day one, right? So we aren't waiting the entire length of a loan term to be able to see some of that return on our investment. And that's a great way to be able to justify purchasing now as opposed to having purchased 20, 30 years ago. You're still in a position that makes it advantageous for you. And another great thing about commercial real estate is that even once that property is paid off, and you now still have an income stream because your tenants are still paying you rent every month to rent out the space in your property. So it's a win-win situation when it comes to commercial. It's also a great way to be able to pass on wealth to your family, to your kids, or whoever you choose to pass it on to. And so there are a lot of advantages to purchasing the real estate, even if it is a little bit later in life. So 30 or 60, all those advantages still apply. Like anything worth doing, there are of course some risks that come along with purchasing commercial real estate, particularly with purchasing a little bit later in life. So let's get into those. The first one is going to be the length of the loan term, right? So if you are already 60 and you sign up for a 30-year loan, that means that you will be 90 by the time that loan is actually paid off. And so that's going to require some intentional planning as to what happens to that property. And that's actually point number 2, which is estate planning. And I happen to be married to an estate planning attorney, so I have heard all of the horror stories about what happens when you don't plan properly for how your property and your assets will pass on to the next generation as a part of your will. So if you don't have an estate plan, I extremely urge you to get one and come up with a solid plan, review it every 3 to 5 years so that what you intend to happen is what happens, right? But so your exit strategy is also going to be different at different ages. And that's something that you want to make sure that you are clear about, right? And so there's a peace of mind that comes with having started, having taken the steps, and having achieved that goal that you don't get if you don't ever start. So let's talk about some advantages to purchasing commercial real estate once you are a little bit later in life. So first and foremost, you are a lender's dream, right? You are so much more established. You have had a history of borrowing money and paying it back. And so that makes you a strong candidate when it comes to a lender standpoint. So that's definitely going to earn you some points there. Also, because you've been working for the last 30, 40 years, you are more likely to have built up a bank of capital that you can then use for the down payment and for reserves going back to qualifying for that loan. So again, that puts you in a position that somebody who is 30 does not have, because they haven't had as much time to really make that bank to be able to then purchase the property. You also know exactly what you want. I'm certain that if you're thinking about this now, this is not the first time, right? And so you have been thinking about this, you've done your due diligence, and you are sound in what it is that you're looking for. And that just makes the experience go so much smoother when you're clear about your intentions and what you're looking to get out of a property. So before we get too far, I want to bring it back to my parents a little bit, because that difference between working because they want to and working because they have to is literally the game changer. And the difference maker there is really your decision to start. Whether or not you start now or whether you start 10 years from now or 5 years from now really determines what the end of your life cycle, the end of your work cycle looks like for you. And so you want to make sure that you're asking yourself, am I keeping in mind my future self and not just my current self? Most people who are working at 75 and 80 are doing so because there were decisions that they made early on in life that led them to a point where they weren't able to have income that comes in regardless of them putting in work or not. And so now you have the opportunity to be able to do that, to be able to decide, no, I'm going to take these steps to be able to put in the work and have something that pays me whether I decide to work or not. And so that's really the key to investing in commercial real estate, whether it's early in life or later in life. So if you've watched this video and you've gotten this far, no matter how old you are, and you're thinking this could be something that could set me up for success, then you should take the step to book a one-on-one with me. There is a link in the description, and that's whether you are in Houston or not. Numbers are numbers, math is math, ready is ready. And so we'll go through some steps and try to determine what your readiness is and what could be a good option for you. So make sure you guys book the link to do a one-on-one, subscribe, and then I'll see you guys in the next video.